Ziad Makhzoumi is the CEO of Prime Consulting. He is an award-winning, celebrated CFO, CEO, business leader, and value creator. He was the CFO of Arabtec and most recently as the CEO of Faqih IVF. Ziad has a master's degree from Manchester Business School. What was that one thing that inspired you that you remember in your early ages?
I mean, I had a very happy childhood. Both my parents believed that education is the best thing they can give your children because they couldn't give us anything else. In a house where it had 3 generations, so the grandmother, my late grandmother, was the dominating factor. You know, she influenced everybody's life to the point what we had to eat and when and so on. But she was a caring person in her own ways. I mean, but grew up in an environment where everybody cared about each other. Mm-hmm. So to me, education was very important. I grew up loving things that didn't, to me, need a lot of efforts, like physics and math. To me, these are very logical sciences. I was very active in what I believe was right. But I was also involved in a student movement. So I was a member at some stage, the president of the student council. But I always believed that you have to do something if you believe it is right. You know, the passion has to be there. I was accepted in Stanford to do electronics. I've always wanted to do medical electronics. I love my school, I love my friends, I love my family, I love the house that we grew up in. But when you get to an age where you feel that your passion is not there, you get frustrated. But also, I wasn't challenged enough. I mean, I did extremely well in school. When you're passionate about something, you do it technically without thinking. You know, it's like sleepwalking.
You were very good at school, which is a privilege and an advantage and a blessing for you. What were you bad at? What were things that you struggled with? What were you rebellious about?
The social issues I was rebellious about. We grew up in an environment that has a lot of hierarchy, so whenever there was the Eid al-Adha or Eid al-Fitr or the feasts, we had to go and meet our elderly. Now, it had advantages because they give you cash and presents, but it had disadvantages because you had to behave and you had to basically show respect by kissing their hand. And that was my first rebellious step. The second rebellion is when I got involved in the student movement and I was part of the student council where if there's something we don't like, I will go to the headmaster and tell him we disagree because of these reasons, and I'll speak in public and move the students to close down the school or go on strike or do whatever. So that, to me, was exciting. Not exciting because I wanted to be an anarchist. I wanted to change the system which I believed was wrong. Education was very important for me, and understanding how things work was very important for me.
Your first real job, Ziad, which one was that, and what trials and tribulations did you go through to get it, and what advice do you have for people who are looking for their first job?
I mean, I didn't know how to look for a job, although we had a careers officer at the university. All they said is just write letters and type them and send them in those days, you know. So things were very cumbersome in those days. We didn't know where to apply, really. I mean, we had the traditional engineering, for example, in my case, employers. So we had to go through the difficult task of finding out what is there, manually preparing letters, posting them in the post office, you know. I used to get those stamp books, you know, so we can save a penny or two on sending them, and hope that somebody would come back to you and with an offer. Mm-hmm. But in my case, it was through connections that I got a job, basically. So that's my first job. When I did my MBA, I was technically approached by Booz Allen Hamilton, as they were called then.
Getting jobs in this market is extremely difficult. The MENA region needs 100 million jobs over the next 10 years. So jobs may not be the future solution, but what do you do to either get yourself ready for a job, in terms of your muscles to make yourself relevant, or going into entrepreneurship? What are your thoughts in terms of first readiness and secondly jobs versus entrepreneurship?
I think both require a different attitude approach. The knowledge skill base is important in both, but an employer will hire you because of your attitude, not just your skill. If you're ready to learn and train. When I was in Booz, for the first 6 months, we'd be sent on training every 2 months or so. to give us the skills that we don't have. Because although you might have an MBA or a PhD in something, you don't meet the requirements of what the real world wants, because we have lots of theories and generalities. What is important is to go and find out what is needed. For example, now, if you ask me what should schools teach, I think they should teach Chinese, because the market is East, for example, instead of just, let's learn Spanish, which there's nothing wrong with Spanish, but if you're not going to work in South America, Spanish probably is not the first choice for you if you're in the Middle East. If you look at what is being offered, I mean, if you go to a cyclical business like contracting, we know it's affected by the market. So if you're going to spend 3 or 4 years or 5 years being an engineer or an architect, and you miss the cycle, then probably you'll be out of work for about 2 years till they pick you up. So it's a matter of planning and mapping and trying to have an intersection on what is the best timing is. The knowledge of content is becoming important. Managing content is very important. So you can do a degree in geography, but you become maybe an expert on social media in geography, and not just write an article that is published. The world is changing. We are connected. We're virtual. Everything is online one way or another. And services could be obtained online. Even, for example, you do counseling online now. And some of the business I am working on, eventually it will be medical diagnostic online, because you just technically you can put a bit of saliva on it, and we give you the modem, and you just link to your iPhone, and we can do a complete profile on you. I mean, we do it now by taking a sample itself, so we're cutting down the lab time and so on. So as you can see, the world is becoming disconnected. Being physically in a place is important, but not as important, depending what you have to offer. If you want to fix a car, you cannot fix it online. So if you want to be a car fixer, fine, but remember, from everything now is related to a service. So if you want to survive, you have to learn how to provide a service inside the organization or outside the organization in that sense. If you want to be an employee, I think it's a good idea to learn the tricks, but I think eventually we all become entrepreneurs. Otherwise, we cannot survive, because we get old, we're not as agile as we used to be, we become too expensive on the balance sheet, so they have to replace us. So none of us are indispensable. So my advice is find out what is needed. I mean, the market needs new businesses, and it supports new business. It is really a service-oriented. We're not heavy industrial community. Therefore, don't go in and design heavy machinery unless you want to manufacture somewhere else, but then the Chinese can do it cheaper than you. So you have to look at things that is realistic.
One of your prize-winning jobs was Arabtec. You became the CFO. You're not an accountant. How did you manage to get a job of the biggest construction company and not even be a basic bean counter?
Well, a position, this is what's misunderstood about a CFO's position. I mean, you need to understand accounts, but you can't be just an accountant, especially when things are bad. You need to be a strategist, a restructuring expert. And in my case, I had to talk to the media and investors. I was the PR agent, technically, media strategist, face of Arabtec for a while. But I looked at it as any other business. I mean, I understand accounts. We had a situation where we defined the priorities. We defined the restructuring and allocated responsibilities. So I used to run it as if it's a war room, because we were at war for the rest of the world. I mean, we had destruction, economic destruction around us on that sense. But this is where my, of course, accounting knowledge as a finance expert, my financial forecasting knowledge, my cash flow management expertise, my strategy view, and what is more important, explaining it to the stakeholders, that's the shareholders, and the people who have invested with us, and the media, because, again, at that stage, everybody was attacking Dubai.
What is your definition of intelligence?
Intelligence is the ability to find solutions to a situation that you thought there isn't a solution. And what's happening with the world now is that there is a lot of data, a lot of information. In it, hidden somewhere, is a lot of knowledge. And if you can pick up that knowledge and apply it where it's appropriate, to me, that is intelligence.
Your philosophy on failure.
Well, I think failure should not be used as a word. I think it's something, again, going back to what people see as failure. I mean, so if you're in a poor country and you make $100,000, then you have succeeded. You might have liver cancer and your kids might be drug addicts, but to them that's successful because the way they describe things is very important. In real life, unfortunately, we're being judged. So if you're in school, you're judged, you failed that exam, therefore you are a failure. No, that subject I didn't do well. And to me, that is an experience how to get it better later. And to me, it's a learning process of finding out what doesn't work. So if you don't pass your exam, then you realize that if you don't study, you don't pass. So what you have been doing, partying before the exam, doesn't work. So there is a learning process from that. And I would like us, I mean, I'm not against discipline. I think discipline is very important. So we can't say, it's okay, go and burn the place down because you'll see, that you can burn wood. That is not the right way of doing things. I think you should learn what doesn't work and not be judged for trying. I mean, I remember I gave a speech at one of the business schools, and I said, the problem with your business school is that your professors can only judge you on what they know, and none of them have worked in real life. How can you become a brilliant businessman if you're taught from a person who never practiced business? And if you don't do it the way they think it should be done, they will fail you. And this is wrong in my view. So going back to the definition of failure, failure is something that doesn't work for whatever reason, but there's always a solution for it. Unless it's terminal, like being shot in the head and possibly die, it's too bad. There is no solution for it.
One takeaway that I can use tomorrow morning, that our audience can see, can actually practice from tomorrow morning to change their lives.
I think you should always look at situations in life as an opportunity to learn, although it might be a very difficult and uncomfortable experience. But if you run away from that experience, if it comes again, you won't be able to handle it. Life is a series of situations that have to be managed. Hopefully most of them are pleasant. In many cases, a lot of them are not. You're being fired, not getting a job, not feeling that you're good, not feeling that you're loved and cared for. But this is life. You have to live and learn how to manage it. It doesn't mean I don't get down or I don't get upset or I don't get angry. Of course I do, like everybody else. But I've changed my attitude, my behavior to how I look at things and manage things and approach them, basically. And unless they have this learning that you can learn from things that don't work and take it as a learning experience and not as a failure, you're going to be cornered, you're going to be frustrated, and most likely you will not succeed. I think people should be more passionate when they're dealing with others. It's very important. Passionate, not in a sense, it's okay, here's money and go buy yourself a fur coat. But passionate as in treat them with some respect. Because they are human beings and they have the right to be on this earth like all of us. And we have to, and I think going back to the attitude, if we treat people with some respect all the time, there's a lot of animosity and a lot of aggression and a lot of hatred will not have an excuse to surface. And that will solve part of the problem. I don't think we have a solution. But I think respect for people and being passionate about what we do and enjoy life in general. Life is amazing. I mean, whatever we do is amazing. And just enjoy it.
Ziad, it's a privilege.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And it's a real blessing that we're friends. Thank you very much indeed. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.